Hi, this is Erin Lincoln and welcome to Make It Monday. Today I'm going to teach you how to heat emboss on die cuts and two-step stamps. This is something I think is a little tricky, so you have to kind of work backwards, and you certainly can do it, but it's not easy to hold on to an itty-bitty die cut and use your heat gun and try not to get extra embossing powder everywhere, so we're going to go ahead and show you how to do that. So I had my card, which we flashed there in a second, and it uses special delivery and bubble talk. And if you notice on those die cuts, there's white embossing powder, and they're all two-step stamps. So this is how you do it. Get your stamp, and I use Versamark to emboss. I know people use other stuff, but Versamark's always worked for me. And towards the top of a piece of cardstock, in this case Summer Sunrise, I'm going to stamp my little truck. And now we're going to add in all the little details like the window for the front of the truck, also in Versamark. We have a little ice cream cone, so you know it's an ice cream truck. And this is like the little surface window with a scalloped curtain or awning on it. I know it's hard to see, it's in Versamark. And that's usually like a watermark stamp, which means it makes it a step or two darker than the cardstock. It's a fun effect, and I never use it for that. I use it for embossing. If I want a watermark effect, I use the matching ink color to the cardstock. Okay, I have all my stamping done. I'm going to just put some white embossing powder on this. We're going to heat emboss it. And remember, this is a video on die cutting, heat embossing on die cuts and two-step stamps. So we haven't even gotten that far yet. We're just heat embossing it right now. I just wanted to remind you, it looked like we were just heat embossing. I always think it's magic how the heat embossing melts and all of a sudden it's like this bright white. Okay, here's the two-step stamp part. I kind of feel if you would have done this first in regular ink and then done the Versamark and embossing on over top of this little detail on the truck, you run the risk of getting embossing powder on this part, and it would have been a mess and wouldn't have been as clean. So why not heat emboss first and do the second part of the stamping second? And that way you don't have to worry about getting embossing powder on your inked portion of your design. I'm using Raspberry Fizz ink, and we're just adding some stripes to the bottom of that ice cream truck. Okay, I busted out my Cuddle Bug, and I'm taking the special delivery die and a piece of white cardstock, which I don't need, and I am die cutting it. I made sure to die cut it towards the top edge of the paper, and I'm going to save this part for later. I don't need it. I'm really interested in the negative design. So I'm going to take what I stamped and heat embossed already and use this part to kind of create a guide as to the placement of my die for die cutting the ice cream truck out precisely and exactly, and looking like I cut it first and stamped and heat embossed it second. Find a little tape, and this is why I put it up on the edge, those two cuts, and so I could secure the paper with tape easily. And your die just kind of fits in the top opening, and you run it through and it'll cut the design out below. For some reason this die didn't work for me. You saw it work on the white, but not on the sunrise. But I think, you know, it's important to show you that things don't always go as planned. And if this was in my, my office and I was doing it regularly, I'd just trim it with a pair of scissors. Okay, there we have a heat emboss design on a die cut. And we didn't have to worry about singeing our fingers or getting embossing powder on fingerprints when handling a little die cut, because we embossed first, cut second. There you go. Alright, I actually have 3 elements on this card that use this technique. We're going to go ahead and do the second, and then the third I'll do off camera. Okay, so again, what I want to heat emboss, which is, I think it says thanks so much, it's from Mixed Messages. We're stamping on Alchemist cardstock and Versamark first, and now we're going to heat emboss it in white. Here's the magic part, my favorite. The second step is the stamping in ink. If you're using a multi-step stamp on your heat embossing, the ink comes second again. So we don't have to worry about excess powder sticking to the inked portion. This is like a little crosshatch speech bubble, which looks absolutely fabulous with the white heat embossing. And then again, I just made a little guide piece, like a puzzle piece, with the Bubble Talk die. I'm stacking my Cuttlebug and adhering it with tape. I'm gonna cut out that speech bubble. And this one pops out perfectly. Yay! Okay, you can save that white piece, and if you want to do this later, keep it with your die cut. And there's one more additional element that I did off camera. So you see I have 2 speech bubbles and 1 ice cream truck. And now I have this dotted line border using the stitching line dies. A little tip here. To prevent the die from impressing into the cardstock where you don't want to, try to die cut it on the edge of your plates instead of across horizontally like I just showed you. I think there's less pressure on the edges, and so you are less likely to have any additional impressing of the die. You'll just get the dots. And that's what we did. Okay, I need to figure out where to put my music notes because, ice cream trucks play music. I just needed a little extra something on this card. And so I'm arranging all my elements. And I'm stamping, and then I'm going to heat emboss. And we're doing this in a visual triangle. There's a triangle made out of these music notes, and that's just a good design tip. And we're varying the music notes. We're not using the same one. We're actually using 2. Now heat embossing. Okay, I have another tip for you as far as heat embossing is concerned. This is what I do. If you notice, I have an X-Acto knife up there. This thing is so handy. For some reason, it works great for scraping off little pieces of stray embossing powder. And because it has so fine a tip on it, I can actually use it to get into these little spaces, and I actually push any stray embossing powder into the design. It's really odd. I don't know how this came about, but it works for me. I probably use it every time I heat emboss. Alright, one last thing. Here, we're going to back those dots we made with the stitching line dies with a piece of Hawaiian Shores cardstock, so that shows through the holes. I just used some glue here. And trim off the edge. Okay, this is Background Basics Random Stripes. I'm going to use this on the card here. I am stamping the thin stripe strip in Summer Sunrise ink on Summer Sunrise cardstock. One edge, then I'm just flipping it over, and I'm going to do the other edge. Very easy to line up. Okay, so I did that, and now we're going to go to the second part of this, and that's taking the thick stripe strip. There's a thin and a thick, and stamping that on top of the original inking in a different color. And in this case, I'm using Raspberry Fizz. And what you get is like this two-tone, really three-tone to four-tone effect. You have the cardstock, you have the two types of ink, and then you have the places where the ink overlaps. So it's really subtle, but you can see a variant of tone and color just by layering two stamp sets. Two background stamp strips. I feel like I'm doing a tongue twister with the stripes and the strips. Okay, there we go. Now we're ready to assemble. And as you can see, there's that like a multi-tonal look there. Okay, I adhere this on a white A2 card. This is nice because the pink panel covers up that opening on the Summer Sunrise cardstock. So I didn't have to really line anything up as far as the background pattern. I'm hiding it all. This goes over top. Now we're just going to adhere all those elements that we did first. Wanted to get the technique out of the way and then assemble the card later. So if you just wanted to see the technique, 3 minutes, you got it done. And then if you want to see the whole process, it's towards the end. Here's my little ice cream truck. Bubble one. And there's our second speech bubble, and I'm going to put this on dimensional adhesive just to make it interesting. We need a little element that is elevated from the rest. This little card's going to have a Cold Stone gift card in it for my babysitter. She needs a little thank you for helping me out these last couple months. And that's why we went with the ice cream truck. Alrighty, there we go. And let me show you my original card, because I didn't use Raspberry Fizz, I used Hibiscus Burst, and it's a little more subtle I thought I liked the Raspberry Fizz more, but I think I like the Hibiscus Burst. So there you go. You can see the technique. And just to repeat, to heat emboss on die cuts, you stamp and heat emboss first, then do your two-step stamp part, and then you make yourself a negative die cut puzzle piece sheet that goes on top, and you die cut it out, which you saw in the beginning. And this prevents singed fingers and any frustration and embossing powder all over the place. Just very simple. It's from working really backwards to the beginning, what you usually would do. Okay, thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to your creations this week, and time to get inky. Thanks. We'll see you back next week with another Make It Monday video.